Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Paw. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soapbox, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box. Welcome back to the 4th box once again, everybody. We are so happy to have Paw back with us after an incredible trip up to Alaska. We really missed you last week. It was a tough week for you not to be here, but happy to have you back, even though I'm sure you'd much rather still be enjoying the beautiful last frontier.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back too, and I wanted to comment that I thought you and your guest, your old friend and mine, Fox, I thought you guys did a great job filling in. I'd love to have him back sometime when we could all three bat some of these topics back and forth. He's certainly well dialed up and has some really strong opinions on things that are going on around us, and we certainly are encouraging other younger people such as you guys' age to be forming opinions and to be watching them subjects. So I thought he was a great representation of another young person who's pretty well dialed up on things going on in the world around us today. But yeah, glad to be back. Welcome all of our listeners who join us week to week. I'm raising a glass of single malt Scotch whiskey tonight, and I'm raising it in honor of all those who are beginning to recognize what we've been saying almost since the beginning of this podcast, that this really is a struggle between good and evil. And some of the events that I'm sure we're going to talk about tonight that have gone on, transpired over the last week or so, are truly a reflection of that. This is not a Democrat-Republican thing, even though I think so many people are quick to try to politicize every event and categorize you into one side or the other. It's so much broader than that. And I think we have to open our eyes. And to all of you who are out there doing that, recognizing that this truly is a battle against evil, I raise my glass and salute to you and welcome to the good side of this equation, because we have to speak out. We cannot be bashful. Truth overcomes in the end. So cheers to you.
Yeah, amen. Cheers. Welcome to the Great Awakening.
Yeah. So tonight, before I offer up our traditional quote, I wanted to call attention to a day we here at the 4th Box celebrate, pay particular attention to, and that is the recently recognized and celebrated Constitution Day, celebrated on September 17th every year since 2004 when that was passed. Previously, it was recognized as Citizenship Day, and that began in 1940. But Constitution Day is here to celebrate and remind all of us about our duty to be aware and understand our Constitution, the formation of our government. So it's September 17th, a reminder to everybody. Yesterday, September 17th, Constitution Day, and as a quote relating to Constitution Day, I wanted to share some words from Albert Einstein, who I found particularly on cue with this quote: "The strength of the Constitution lies entirely in the determination of each citizen to defend it. Only if every single citizen feels duty-bound to do his share in this defense are the constitutional rights secure." So let's all keep in mind Constitution Day. We will be talking more about this next week and the significance of the Constitution in our daily lives.
Yeah, that's perfect. We'll definitely come back to this. I know we really want to talk about it. I've already got a lot of things to say about the fact that it rolls right by without anyone even noticing. So definitely some words to be had on that subject for sure. And to your point, it is certainly something that's near and dear to our hearts. So Yeah, with that, happy Constitution Day, and I'll let you just get right into your regular quote that you already had queued up, and we'll roll on with the episode for the night.
So I have a quote tonight from a contemporary, so to say. I really like it. Let me be a free man, free to travel, free to stop, free to work, free to trade where I choose, free to choose my own teachers, free to follow the religion of my fathers, free to talk, think, and act for myself, and I will obey every law or submit to the penalty if those freedoms are provided. And that comes from Chief Joseph, who I think many folks would recognize if you saw a picture of him. He did star in different TV shows and movies as the Indian that he is. So that came from Chief Joseph.
That's a great quote. I think that's a really interesting perspective on freedom. It's one that people don't necessarily think about first, right off the cuff, with what freedom is, especially the way we talk about it and the way that people like us talk about it. You know, we're always calling to mind our founding fathers and what rebels, what outlaws they were, and how much they had to live outside the normal limits to earn us the freedom that we have today. But the point that he's making is that as long as your freedoms as a man on this earth are intact, then you have no issue, you know, obeying laws and stepping in line. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. It's certainly not a way that I've looked at it. But it's important because people are quick to, you know, jump to this stance that anyone who wants freedom, anyone who wants America to return to a state of free people are outlaws and radicals. And in fact, it's not that at all, not even a little.
Of course, and that's such a cool observation because what he's really doing in this quote is breaking down very simple personal liberties that we are all supposed to have. And if government makes a law to ensure that I have those, I will be sure to comply. However, if they make, which they have, laws that infringe upon my right to do any of those things, then I'm going to stand in objection to that. I'm going to rebel against that. And that's what it's saying. Very simple terms. He's spelling out simple truths and liberties that we are all supposed to have. And if government is making laws to protect those things, I'll abide by them all.
Totally.
So so it was a great quote. Happy to find that one, and I thought it fits in well with some of the things that we're going to have to talk about here tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. And I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's important right now when we're in such a heated state as a country. You know, it always feels, almost every week, it feels like, man, things are worse than when we left off last week. How could that be? I thought things were so bad. How could things still be worse? And this week, and really in truth, last week, I felt very much like a line in the sand had been drawn. And I felt like we had kind of went over that precipice and now we're really in the fold. Like now it's here. You know, this evil that we talk about, it's here. This culture war that we're afraid of is here. And it was very much already this way last week. But when Fox and I first spoke, when we had our conversation, it was September 10th. It was the day that Charlie Kirk had been shot. And it was very, very fresh for us and for everyone. And it truly rocked this country in a way that I couldn't have anticipated. And it's so interesting because you and I talk about all these different ideas, all these different things that we see play out. And we always think we kind of understand somewhat, you know, the route that we're on. Like, not perfectly. We don't know what the bad guy will do. We don't know what those in power will do. We don't know what the global cabal will pull to try and see their agenda come to pass. But we have kind of a broad idea of ways that they might slowly slide into power. And yet something like this happens and it absolutely shocks me to my core. And I did not see it coming, and I couldn't have seen it coming. And more so, I couldn't have seen the reaction coming. And so tonight we're going to be fully focused on Charlie Kirk once again and everything that has transpired in the last week. When it first happened, when we first talked about this last week, we had very little information. Now we have a lot more information, and yet there are still endless questions. Most of the questions we have will never be answered, much like many of the major events that have happened like this over the course of, truthfully, the last few years. So we're going to dive in and we're going to start asking questions. And I know a lot of these questions are questions that people are already asking around the country, but I don't think we should let up. And I know I'm going to be repeating ideas that other people have already shared, but I don't care, because if one new person hears it, that's important to me. I think we need as many people awake to this as possible, because truly, when I say evil is here, I mean it. So we're going to dive into that tonight. I already said it, a week ago, September 10th at Utah Valley University. This is when Charlie Kirk was shot. And the first thing that I want to get into here is that the footage of this was inescapable, especially for the younger generation, especially for, let's say people 35 and under who were on their phones all day. You could not get away from it. It didn't matter if it came from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, showed up in a group chat somewhere. It was in your face, even though you did not want to see it. And I just said this to you moments before we started recording. Nobody should have had to see it. It's not something that most of us, one, ever signed up for, but two, are equipped to see. We're not soldiers. We didn't sign up to go to war. People go to war and see things like that, and they don't really recover from it. And that's what happened to an entire country in one day, at one moment. In the span of 15, 20 minutes, all of us had to experience that same type of gore and death. And you watch movies and you play video games and you have this idea of something like that happening to a person. It's not the same when it's real, when it's a real human, and when you're watching it in real time. And I was so not myself. Even the day that I recorded that with Fox, I felt so just like completely unaligned, and it made me so physically ill that I just can't even really explain the emotions and how tense and sad and scared and angry I was. And knowing that almost everyone in the country was experiencing that level of discomfort and unrest. That's the important word here, unrest. Because immediately then you think to yourself, well, what can you accomplish when you have an entire nation at this level of, heightened? And then you realize, oh, it's not even just our country. Everyone in the world saw this. Now you have everyone in the world experiencing this level of trauma. So there's a lot of questions that I want to get into tonight, but that's the first thing I wanted to touch on, because, that in and of itself is already an issue that I don't think you and I can even unpack here in one episode. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think, as you described, it was such an emotional thing to have witnessed, and I personally did not go looking for it. I heard right away that there were very, very graphic pictures that were all over related to this event, and immediately my mind goes to who was truly behind this, and what kind of emotional distress, what kind of mind control twist does somebody want to put the world population into by witnessing this event? Who stands to gain? Who is trying to do something as a result of this? To just simply believe that it was some naive 22-year-old that did this, I'm simply not comfortable with that analogy. And I know we're going to have it presented, and we're going to have all of the high-ranking people that suggest that this is what it was. But like all of these things that are meant to alter human thinking, I believe there are bigger forces behind it. So, as you mentioned, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of unsettled people, and there should be. There should be unsettled people. And I think when you see the ground level stuff of people that are essentially cheering it on or advocating for more, you, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum or no spectrum at all politically, you should recognize that these are evil voices. When we have people who are standing in support of death, I don't care who that would have been, what their political leanings might be, their sexual preference, nothing matters when you come to taking a life. There is absolutely no justification, and these cowards that are running around trying to encourage more, who and what is meant to benefit by this sort of action? That's where my mind goes. So, first and foremost, I wasn't on last week with you. My heart and my prayers go out to this great young man who happened to have an opinion, who happened to be able to articulate that very well, the father of two children, young children, to have been slain because he was not afraid to speak his beliefs or not afraid to exercise his right to free speech. And have people in this country and other places, but in this country in particular, that are standing, applauding, encouraging more. This is what we need to get into people's heads. There is evil at work. Nobody, nowhere should be able to find any room in their heart to justify such an event. Nobody.
Yeah, that's the big thing that's really tough with all of this. I mean, that's the thing that is the most disappointing and the most enraging with this entire situation. It's horrible that it happened. And we're going to get into some of the theories of what really went on there. Of course, we have to talk about that. But we cannot let this response, this positive response to an event like this, go unnoticed. Because to me, again, speaking to the point I made very early on in this episode, that shows me more than I even knew that evil is here and is walking among us. Demons from hell are walking on this earth, and it is nothing short of that. It truly, this is a biblical time to be living in, and there's nothing else I can say about it. It's not just people who watched the guy a couple of times on YouTube and they think it's funny to watch someone be absolutely horrifically murdered in front of their own eyes. Like, that's not a normal response from humanity. So we have to understand that this really is evil acting on earth, and it is our responsibility to stand firm in the faith. You know, how many times have we spoke about the breastplate of truth? And I'm not going to get them all right, but you know, the helmet of righteousness, you know them all. I say that for things that are much, much less evil than this. Like, now is the time. This is the time. This is when we are called to actually be righteous and to not back down in our beliefs more than ever. So we're going to get into all that a little bit more too, but let's get right into it.
I want to just touch on that also. And what I wanted to offer is, first of all of us out here who are seeking truth and trying to speak truth and using our voice and our opinion to encourage thought. We cannot back away because an event like this happened. We have to stand on the throttle. The second point to that is, if somehow or another you make room, you tolerate this kind of an event because you believe that's where your political alignment takes you, you're a coward, you're a punk, you know it's wrong, and you don't have the wherewithal to say, guess what? This is where I break ties with the demonic. Maybe I'm a Democrat, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that, maybe I'm a communist. But if you somehow have found a place in your heart to accept that activity, you are complicit in the spreading of evil in this world and in this country. And we are going to stand in the face of that. We have a job to do. We are commanded to stand powerful, to stand strong, and to cling to the faith. We are commanded to do that, as this young man did. We cannot shrink back from this, and anybody who finds any room to tolerate or make an excuse for that action, you are complicit. And not only that, you're a coward.
I cannot agree more with that, and I'm thankful that you said that, because that's a really big part of it. Like, if there are people in your circle who are part of this group that is cheering this on and you're not cutting them off, you are no better. We do not have time to approach this situation lightly. We simply do not. And you do not get to tolerate evil in this level, at this high of a level, when we're this close to crunch time. Like, I'm sorry. No, I have cut off people for less. And I did it, I've done it over the course of the past week. And there, to be fair, were not many people left in my circle at all. But if I saw them, they either got called out directly or they just got removed. I'm done. Like, I don't care. I simply do not. It is not my job to judge you, but I do not have to associate with you. And I do not have to call you a brother or sister. And I won't.
100%. Absolutely, unequivocally correct. If somebody on one side of the aisle is standing up and clamoring for benefits for those that don't work and all those guys, oh, okay, we can have our disputes, we can have our argument. If somebody stands up in support of somebody being murdered, and oddly enough, in front of a whole people so that the world would see it, if you're standing up for any inkling of that, you are supporting evil. Yeah. You have to have the courage and the wherewithal within your heart to say, nope, I'm not going down that line. I don't care how many other things that this group may stand in support of. This is where we cut bait. We're not following that path. That's where, and oddly enough, there are some reports coming out that are seeing significant shifts. Younger people, again, that are saying, you know what, I can't go along with this anymore. This is outside of any clear-thinking person's ability to rationalize or justify.
100% that's true. It's incredible, and I do think there is a silver lining that came from this event, and we're going to get into that. But I want to go through some of the other important pieces to this puzzle, because it is a puzzle, and though we're being told it's solved, it isn't. And when this very first happened, there were theories flying in from all directions, all kinds of ideas, so many voices. Everybody wanted in on this. You know what I mean? Everybody wanted to speak their mind on it. And first, they were theories because we didn't have answers yet. Now, they're theories because the answer doesn't line up with what happened, and it doesn't match reality. So the theories are sound, and we're going to get into them. The broader overlying theories are America did it, the American government did it, right? Israel did it, or woke culture did it. Those are kind of the big three. And obviously those can be broken down into a couple different sectors. But let's work backwards with what we're being told is reality, which is closest to the idea that woke culture and, the leftist mind virus did it, that it falls most closely into that category. Mm-hmm. Of course, the story that we're being sold is that a young, radicalized, trans-loving Antifa leftist is the one who did it. Mm-hmm. And not just that, but he happened to have Republican parents. A father who, used to serve for the sheriff's department. So you can already see how this story, if somebody wanted to spin it into something that lit a fire as far as a culture war, you can already see how that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Because the left is saying, oh, well, he was raised by, right-wing parents. It's the right-leaning people's fault. And of course, the right-leaning people are going to say, oh, well, he's a leftist. He's dating a trans person. This is the left-sided people's fault. So already you can see how this headbutting is mm-hmm. being exacerbated by our own government. As if the mm-hmm. story wasn't going to already lend itself to that. Now you can see how the government is perpetuating that, right? So, okay, let's just go with the simple facts. It shouldn't really matter, what somebody's parents are, right? That doesn't really make a difference to what your own ideologies are. So let's say that in theory, it is leftist ideologies that truly triggered this event. If that's the case, then the political divide that's in this country is far worse than I thought. Far worse. Because if you can, with simple propaganda and messaging through mainstream media and social media, convince a 22-year-old person to go and kill someone for their beliefs, and then have the people who think the same going, yes, woo, awesome, that's so great, I'm so glad that he did this, and then following up online with lists and threads publicly posted of the public figures they think someone should off next. If that's the case, then we're not in a good place at all. And the Civil War has already begun as far as, the United States citizenry, objectively. But the first thing, of course, that we have to call attention to, which we already did a little bit here, is the absolutely abhorrent response from the people on the left. And that's where you see these lists online that are calling out names of people that they think other people should go and do this to. And I don't know if we'll see that happen, but immediately there's a speculation there where we go, okay, if we see another one or two conservative leaning public figures being dropped off, it very well could be all just caused by leftist ideologies. Now, if we see the flip side of that and we see a left-leaning political figure, commentator, whatever it might be, find themselves in the same situation, then immediately I go, well, okay, we know that this is more than just some 22-year-old kid, because this is really stoking a fire here. So obviously people are concerned that we're going to see something like that happen. So far, we haven't, thank God. But we have to be prepared for anything because we don't know yet what is behind this. Now, going off this leftist thing here a little more, we cannot play into that hand that's reality for several reasons. One, because there's a lot of pieces that don't line up, but two, because it's a little bit of a too obvious play by our government, because the man was literally shot on the eve of September 11th. One of our own government's most notable scams, especially when it comes to creating more power and control for themselves. So if we think about it that way, and we think about what sort of control the government could gain immediately from a situation like this, let's just look at the obvious, right? Pam Bondi is already saying that she's going to be cracking down on hate speech, noting, that this doesn't fall under protected free speech, which is, she's getting pushback from that, and rightfully so, because Charlie Kirk and his supporters would have never stood for something like this. This is the exact opposite of what Charlie Kirk stood for. All speech is free speech. It doesn't matter if it's hateful to somebody or somebody else. But you can already see how the government is saying, oh, let's step in here. Oh, let's help you guys so that we don't have to be afraid of speaking our minds. We can help. The other piece that I don't like is, now we talked a little bit about that video and what it did to people, right? So it kind of triggered this fight or flight response on a really broad scale. So you do see a lot of heightened responses, a lot of emotional responses. But so this is where it gets tricky, right? Because you said we cannot maintain relationships with people like this. And I agree. However, there's a line. It is not our job to judge the fate of these people. And what I don't like that I'm seeing a lot of is that there are databases forming of these people who are the ones that are cheering, who are applauding, who are encouraging more of this, who are saying absolutely obscene things about Charlie and his family, absolutely disgusting things. I'm seeing databases being formed online of these people so that these people are called out and lose their jobs. Hey, look, I have no issue if these people lose their jobs for what they said publicly. You say things like that publicly and your employer decides to fire you, that's on you. And the people on the right, of course, are like, well, we lost our jobs during COVID. They should lose their jobs during this. First of all, you're feeding right into their hand there. That's already an issue. Second of all, When has forming databases against your fellow man ever worked out? Well, you don't have to like these people, and you shouldn't. You should tell them to their face that they are evil and they need Jesus. Absolutely. However, if we're contributing to databases of our fellow man, something is wrong. If you want to call their employer and privately tell that person what you saw online, that might be okay. That might be fine. But if you're creating databases that can be found by people in our government, this is the exact same thing that we didn't want to happen to us during COVID. It's the exact same. We don't get to decide what the government does with groups of people. The government doesn't get to put us into groups. That's not their job. So it's very, very possible and plausible that, sure, this is all just caused because the woke left has radicalized a generation, encouraged violence, stoked the fire, promoted all of this hatred between races, between class, between religion, between sexes, between race, everything. They've promoted it nonstop for the last 10 plus years. So it's completely logical that this could be the cause. However, we cannot respond to that in this way. That is a fast track for government overreach.
Mm-hmm. You know, you really just opened up a whole gamut of things to talk about here. But one of the things, and we've talked about it in many episodes, and I've believed it for a long time, that there are ulterior forces outside of this country who use this country's government, and the deep state who sit behind our government to accomplish their end game. And to that end, I'm talking about who really stands to benefit. We've talked about there being forces that are promoting a civil war. Then is it just convenience that we have the left-right paradigm immediately thrust into this horrible event, and we have a group on this side that basically stands along leftist ideology, and immediately you have a right side, left side to this issue. That is so ground level. I think it's so elementary, so short-sighted. I think there is something much bigger than that, and that is all of these events are perpetuated for the purpose of achieving the end. And that's where I see that the people at the end of this that want this country out of the way know that by dividing us on significant issues, by altering people's minds, by witnessing the type of event, which I want to quickly point out that I expect that the Trump event out in Butler, Pennsylvania was intended to do the same thing, only there was a little bit of a mishap there where that didn't take place. So now you take another significant public figure who obviously stands on one side or the other, that's easy to get the other side revved up about. And it just seems to me like there is a logical path to follow this back to where somebody else in a higher position that uses the deep state, who uses our government to accomplish their end. So I will never accept that this was just some kid, as you described, that's been radicalized by the upbringing or by what he's been exposed to and decided that he was going to do it. I just can't swallow it. Way too much, way too big of a picture thing here. So as you dig down into this, my mind immediately goes into that. There's other things at play. Somebody is continuing to try to promote the division. And oddly enough, we talked a couple of weeks ago, are we getting too close on uncovering a whole lot of significant global leaders in the Epstein thing and other things going on where we need to rev up the left-right thing again? We need a big event, and that's immediately where my mind goes. Now, it may be a century or two before all that is washed out, if it ever is, but my mind cannot help but start to see where these were useful events for the accomplishment of one global government, where there's the minions left working for the few and the rest of us are here fighting for the scraps. And if you happen to stand up and speak back against it, you're either going to be disappeared or you're going to be, somehow or another enslaved. So, you brought up a lot of great points there. I wanted to touch on, I think quite possibly the Trump shooting out in Butler was intended to accomplish the same thing, where there's a whole big mind control aspect to this when significant parts of the global population have been exposed to this. I think there is something that was designed to be accomplished within the mind of every one of us.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, let's look back on that for a moment. It was live. It was a live broadcast. Let's assume he did get shot in the head. I mean, this this thing that we're seeing transpire right now could have happened months ago. We could have been right in this same position now. Conveniently, though, for who I assume is the deep state, there are a lot of things going on right now that, conveniently are being overshadowed by this death at this time. So let's break down a little bit of why this idea that we're being sold doesn't make sense before we get into some of those things we're being distracted from. So a lot of this you've probably seen. There's probably, quite a few of our listeners who've seen many of it. Again, I know, like I said, I'm going to be repeating stuff. This is something that's being talked about widely, but I want to do my part in speaking the truth that I know and the truth that I've seen, because truth is the only thing that defeats evil, and I'm going to continue to speak truth until I cannot. So going into that, this story that we're being told is, that it was the woke culture and this leftist propaganda that triggered this event. And because of that, you have, a 22-year-old kid who crawls up onto a roof directly in front of where Charlie Kirk is sitting, facing out to the crowd. And the story goes, as described by our very lovely and always dependable FBI, that he fires his Mauser 98 one time from about 175 yards away, and he manages to hit Charlie directly in the neck, proceeds to disassemble the rifle, crawl down from the building. Allegedly, it's most likely in his backpack at this point. Then he runs off into the woods to make his grand escape. He later tells his dad, who reports it, and, the rest is supposedly history, and now we have him in custody. Obviously, there are a lot of holes to punch in this story right off the bat. The FBI also told us that the rifle was found later in the woods, wrapped in a towel, completely reassembled. So, okay. From a time perspective, you're telling me this kid is on the run. Probably high adrenaline, right? Sure. But has the ability to completely break down a rifle, put it back in his backpack, and then put it back together. Not that far from the crime scene. Why would you be spending time on the crime scene, like close to the crime scene? Already, that's pretty weird. Secondly, why would you put the gun back together? If it were really this getaway moment, wouldn't you just ditch the backpack? So already we have a weird situation there where it kind of feels like the FBI is giving us a story in a way that I guess they thought maybe nobody would question that story. They said it in a very confident way. This is what happened. This is matter of fact, and that's it. There's nothing else to see here. But the FBI later tells us that a small towel and a screwdriver with Robinson's DNA were found on the roof. Okay, so presumably that's a screwdriver that he used to disassemble the rifle. So how did he reassemble the rifle without the screwdriver? Already that's weird. Again, like these are very simple things to pull apart, and you don't have to know a lot about many things to already go, that's just weird. Sure, could it have happened? Sure. But is it very weird? Yeah, absolutely. Secondly, the angle doesn't make sense. The running story is that he was out in front of Kirk and shot directly through the neck. Now, there's all these videos that make it look like he gets hit in the chest, and it either ricochets or goes through his chest. And many experts online who know much more than I do about entry and exit wounds of a bullet and the angles and trajectories of ammunition are saying this is not an entry wound, this is an exit wound. Like the way that the blood pours, the way his whole body gets shifted this direction, the force is coming from what would have been his right side and leaving the left. So I would think that the FBI would know information like this. Surely this is part of the detective research that goes into something of this caliber. But everyone is saying, who has any expertise, is saying this person, this shooter, came from Charlie's right-hand side. There's no way that this person shot directly. So again, okay, could it just be a weird fluke? Yep, sure. But it's kind of weird that the FBI hasn't even said, Yeah, we hear about these theories online. We're going to go ahead and debunk it. They haven't even brought it up. They've just been like, yep, wipe my hands of it, case closed, shot from the front. Odd. 2 arrests were made almost immediately on site, which at this point most people presumed were just merely for distraction because these suspects were let go very quickly. Very quickly. And if you're at an event of this scale and somebody who's globally recognized is assassinated, I would think there would be a little bit more detective work rather than being like, did you do it? And they go, no. And you go, you're free to go. Like, pretty weird that 30 some minutes passed and they let their suspects just go back into the crowd and the chaos. Like, pretty weird. Not only that, but one of the initial suspects was in fact one of the first eyewitnesses at 9/11. Oh, that's 2 really, really big, nationally altering events to be right there in front of the media for. I've said it before and I've said it again. There's just not that many coincidences. Coincidences happen, but they don't happen this often because that's statistically impossible. The missing plane. Plane leaves Provo. Little plane, private plane. Leaves Provo Airport. Illegally disables its tracking for like hour and a half, something in that realm. Which, again, it's illegal. Planes don't typically fall off the radar. Like, there's not really any storm they could have flown into or turbulence. It doesn't happen. Gets shut off. Nobody's talking about that already. There was talk about it the day of, the day after, and now it's like somehow just gone and the FBI hasn't even looked into that, it seems. Okay, that's weird. And how about the hand signals? I'm sure you've seen the videos of the guys behind Kirk giving signals, which look pretty similar to some other events, i.e. Trump and Butler. Could it be a coincidence? Did the guy have a scratchy head and then an itchy arm? Maybe. Sure. Again, how many of these coincidences can pile up on top of each other before we go, oh, that's impossible? So already this whole picture doesn't make sense. The pieces of the puzzle don't fit together. And then the Amazon book. This could have absolutely been a fluke. Could have been a weird leftist prank to rile people up. However, the book gets posted on Amazon. Its published date is September 9th. That doesn't mean that it was actually on Amazon on September 9th. There's no way to go back and prove that now. I've tried the Wayback Machine. I can't find it on September 9th. It could very much just be that somebody pretended to write a book about Charlie Kirk's shooting and post it on Amazon the day before the shooting transpires. It could. However, even if that is only there to rile people up, that is a problem that we should be looking into. We should investigate why somebody would do that. And instead, nope, we've got our guy. We're not going to question any of this other stuff. That's weird.
Yep. Yeah, again, so many of these subjects could spend a whole session on. The FBI and their immediate solution, or very quick solution, I think is done for several things. It's done for optics. They know that the bulk of the country, and we can say this just about every event going forward, the bulk of the country is so gullible, so easy to believe the experts. All somebody has to do is declare themselves an expert, and half the population is simply going to go along with it. So if the FBI comes out, rather quickly dismisses two suspects, and then within the next 24 hours or whatever it was, 36 hours, has a solution to the whole thing, cut and dry. That's done for a couple of reasons, I would suspect. Number one, to prove how efficient they are and calm the masses. Number two, redirect all attention away from these things that are popping up from the conspiracy crowd, right? Yeah. So I think that's kind of a natural thing. And then, as you mentioned earlier about the deeper side of it, where the Pam Bondi is suggesting that we're going to start cracking down on anybody who talks about a subject that somebody might find distasteful. If we talk about not really supporting the transgender thing and that whole DEI situation, then we are going to be deemed hateful speakers and we're going to have our platform shut off or whatever. So there seems to be the tie to the deep state. And oddly enough, these are Trump people, right? These are all Trump people.
Yeah.
So there's just so much that we are unable to unravel because it rather quickly ties into people that many of us want to have some level of trust in. So I think the big things that were attempted to be accomplished by this, I'm going to stick by this, were division between us, the people who may have been getting close on one subject or another, of really uncovering the real evil behind the curtain. So we need a big event, and we got to get them stirred back here, fighting amongst themselves about things that have nothing to do with what's really going on. I won't leave go of that. I continue to believe that. There are all kind of folks out there, as you so adequately mentioned, who know much more about ballistics and entry wound, exit wounds, all of those sort of things, body shift impact when it's impacted by something like this. All kind of stuff. The speculation will go on forever. There's still a lot of speculation about the Kennedy murders, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that will continue. But I think the FBI, in an effort to keep themselves clean and above the fray, wanted to have a quick solution, clean, cut and dried, and it refocuses a lot of attention that they can poop. Now, the other voices are continuing to pop up saying this needs looked into, such as the plane, and now there's reports of a plane for an hour and a half with spy capabilities overhead watching this. There's as you mentioned, also reports about people moving through the crowd in a very organized fashion, giving hand signals and gestures. All of these things should be being pecked apart without there being a cut and dried solution. This thing should take. There should be hundreds of interviews, and there should be hundreds of press conferences revealing the findings of those interviews. To me, it looks like what we got to try to do is get everybody stirred back up and fighting amongst ourselves down here at the minion level, down here at the peon level, down here at the we the people level. We can't let them get too close to the source of the evil behind all this. That's what I keep coming back to, because there are many, many, many questions. As you suggest, if there are people out there encouraging others be shot and have pictures of them with a bullseye on their head, why aren't these people being dragged in? These are terroristic threats. There are opportunities to be dragging these people in. I'm sure these numbers of where this stuff originated, these whatever this computer stuff is, they can tell exactly why aren't these people being dragged in. So is it really meant to fester down here at the Dominion level so that the folks that are really should be under the spotlight can get away? I don't know. A lot of things just don't feel right at all.
Yeah. It's a false flag. It just is. And there's 25 other different points we can bring up, but we're not going to talk all night about just the reasons that it's not really what happened. But thank God the internet is what it is, because it is very similar to what happened with JFK. But we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have TikTok then, and we didn't have podcasts, and now we do. And people are picking this apart way fast. And more shit is coming to light every single day, and it's not going to stop. And to your point, these people who are posting these lists online, I have no reason to believe the people that are posting them are not within our own government. Stoking the fire, feeding this culture war. That absolutely could be the truth. Allegedly, this Tyler Robinson kid was chatting about his plans on Discord, and Discord says we have literally no records of that. So the truth is gonna come out quicker than ever before, because we have access to so much more information, and people are paying attention, like serious. So I want to get into a couple of the other thoughts about like what may have gone on. Obviously, we just kind of we picked apart the one that maybe it's just the woke mind virus, and obviously we've picked this apart as much as we're going to tonight. It's not just that the pieces don't line up here, but there's just a lot more motivation behind some of these other theories. And one of those, like I had already mentioned, is that perhaps Israel did it. This is the one that I think is gaining the most traction online. And a lot of people have been speaking out against the Israeli government. And I think it's very important to, people get confused here. People think Israel is just the country of Israel, and that, automatically when you speak poorly about it or speak about something like this, you are being anti-Semitic and you're being hateful towards Jews. That's not what it is. This is Zionists that we're talking about. This is the people in Israeli government. This is Netanyahu. This is no different than talking about any other political leader, right? Like, people don't say, oh, I hate all Americans just because they hate Trump. People can recognize the difference there, right? So same thing. We're talking about Netanyahu and his cohort. Now, Charlie had very recently started speaking out about Israel pretty openly on his podcast, on other people's podcasts. And this is kind of tough because Turning Point, his organization, was very heavily funded from Israeli organizations and Israeli donors. Heavily. So that obviously leads everyone to kind of believe that this is how he became as big as he did. This is why Turning Point became so big, because he had a lot of Zionist agenda that he was kind of promoting because those were the people funding him. It's no different than, Pfizer trying to sell you on why you need a vaccine. Mm-hmm. It's the same. So that's obviously unfortunate, but Charlie woke up to these things prior to his murder and was speaking out against them. He recognized what happened, and it is possible that he bit the hand that fed him, and that was what resulted in his assassination on September 10th. So, along with that, which you and I think many people believe is somewhat tied here, Charlie was drawing major attention to the Epstein cover-up. A lot. Within days of his assassination. Even supporting the idea that Jeffrey Epstein was an agent of Mossad, which many people, again, on our wavelength at all, believe is just absolutely fact, and there's not even a question there anymore. Oddly enough, there was another vote in the Senate to release the Epstein files at almost the same time of Charlie's murder, and it was voted down. And nobody's really talking about this because, I get it. Nobody's really talking about anything that's gone on other than this, because it's a big deal, and I understand that. But there's a lot of stuff that's still happening within our government. They haven't taken days off work because of this. They're still moving. And one of those things is shooting down the Epstein files again. The other thing that's pretty weird is that Benjamin Netanyahu, while in the midst of attacking 7 different countries, literally, somehow managed to pause and tweet about Charlie's passing before any other political leader in our own government, like almost immediately. That is pretty weird. Not only that, but and I'm not going to get it right. The Jerusalem Chronicle or Jerusalem Report or something to that effect, obviously an Israeli news network, was the first news network globally to post about his passing. How and why did they have that information before anyone here? Again, a lot of coincidences here, an awful lot. If they're coincidences, it's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. We talked back a couple months ago about the Israeli influence over almost all of our Washington, D.C. federal level officials. We talked about that. And I think part of what happens in this country, because I think we still largely consider ourselves a Christian nation. And Christians understand biblically that those who bless Israel will be blessed and those that curse Israel will be cursed. Well, that's the nation of Israel and the people that believe in those customs and all that. Not the government of Israel that is trying to influence and largely does influence U.S. politics and other politics around the world. That's where you got to separate. You can support Israel, the people of Israel, and still stand in opposition to the influence of Israelis in the U.S. government and other governments around the world. I think
100%.
I think that helps a lot of people get beyond that, and I think partly that might have been Charlie's understanding as he went forward that the Israelis have a significant impact on all of our elected officials at the federal level and many at the state level to steer the direction of this country. And if somebody with a platform the size of Charlie Kirk's is starting to point some of these things out, that becomes a threat. Furthermore, the Epstein stuff, I will not take that off the table. We talked about it weeks ago, maybe months ago now, that there's going to be significant distractions to keep us off the trail, keep people that are interested in knowing the truth off the trail, that so we can continue to protect those that are really the true smaller group behind the evil that's going on all over. And the last thing I want to talk about related to all of that, the last two subjects that we were on, let's not ever forget that our government altered the minds of uniformed and non-uniformed military actors to conduct things all over the world that don't come back to a U.S. government operation. And if you don't think that we can do that to some 20-year-old kid over in Butler and some 20-year-old kid out in Utah and other places around this country to accomplish an end that the deep state and the global cabal wants, we're sadly mistaken. Let's not forget that many of these events that have taken place shaping the direction of this country were initiated and pushed forward by our own government.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, look at all the different operations that we know about within the CIA. And we think, we think the CIA is divulging all of their secrets. We think we know all of them.
Yeah.
No, we absolutely do not. Absolutely do not. Not only that, I wanted to actually touch on that earlier now that you say that. Where do you think the term conspiracy theorist came from? Because it was, in fact, the CIA. Mm-hmm. So you think you're so righteous calling people conspiracy theorists. It literally came into rotation because the CIA wanted to get people off their trail. That's the whole point. Sure. This is people that are catching on to us. We have to find some kind of slur so that hopefully we can quell the momentum behind them. Like, that's the whole point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Spoon-fed the exact words, and now we got all we got to do is call somebody a name, put it out there through the propaganda arm of the Communist Party working for at the behest of the globalist cabal, put it out there with all the big media outlets, conspiracy theory. Now all of a sudden, that's a negative. Oh, that's just a conspiracy theorist. And they can get their support, once again, keeping us feuding amongst ourselves by calling us these sort of names. I wonder what our friend that we had on back in the past, Mr. Kevin Shipp, who we had on, and we've read his book. I wonder what he'd have to say about these events. And maybe we could touch base with him, because to me, too many things smell way too fishy. The other side looks way too clean. Well, we got that cleaned up already. Let's move on. Meanwhile, we're down here batting ourselves to pieces while we should be focused on, once again, the criminals that have stolen from us, enriched themselves, and enslaved us and our future generations. That's really what. And not only that, there's still a certain aspect of it, to me, that will always tie in, and that's the overall desire to have a global depopulation effort. And any kind of these conflicts or other things going on is, in my mind, working toward that end.
Totally agree with you. I want to touch on a couple other things that happened over the last week or so. Obviously, we mentioned the Epstein files not being released, but I do want to touch on a couple others that relate specifically to Israel. Marco Rubio paid a visit to Israel and ended up proposing a bill to revoke passports for the critics of Israel in this country. So there already is an anti-Semitism database in this country that was, I think, initiated, I don't know, honestly, maybe like 4 years ago at this point. It's not new. Kind of this criticism that the American public has had against Israel's hand in our government has been ongoing for a while. So this is not so much a new database, but this is a new bill that says, if we spot you doing these things, we're going to revoke your passport. That's definitely outside the bounds of government. And I'd really like to know, what the reasoning is behind that, specifically when it comes to, protecting American citizens and upholding the freedoms of American citizens. I'd love to know what they're even painting this as, because I don't think you can paint it any way other than taking your rights away and your ability to travel away because you spoke poorly about a nation when we claim to be America first.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a tough look. We also approved another $650 million for Israel's missile defense because they need it. I know they're deeply in need while they're bombing 7 countries during Charlie's murder. So good thing we're there to support them.
Yeah. I think this gets back to the very foundational things that we started this podcast over. The reason and how they get away with it is the Constitution has been disassembled. They wave it around at election time. They carry it around in their pocket. None of them live up to it. All of you right-wingers who are convinced that we got Trump in there and we're working toward the right end, if you can stand in support of somebody, Marco Rubio, such as you just mentioned, that is threatening to take people's right to travel away simply because they have a position that is detrimental or speaking out against some of the activities that we just discussed here, such as the Israeli influence on our own elected officials, that being judges, senators, representatives, and so forth. And we're not supposed to speak out about it. And if you do, you're never going to leave this country again because we're going to revoke your passport. If you think somehow that you can align yourself because that's our guys that are in there, so we got to go along, then you are as deeply disrupted and disturbed as those on the left. You are.
Yep.
The rule book is the rule book. You cannot tolerate breaking the law, the supreme law of the land, just because it's the right side that's doing it and you happen to be a right-winger. That is how they get away with it. Well, it's our guy in there, and this is what he says we got to do, so we can stand and support him. Wrong. You're wrong. 100% wrong. If you understand the book, you read the book, you understand the limitations placed on government and what their authorities are, and as soon as they step out of bounds of that, you should be standing in opposition. If you bend over backwards because it's somebody on my side of the aisle, you are just as bad as those on the other side of the aisle. Period.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's really the entire point of this message. That's the entire thing to take away from Charlie Kirk being assassinated and the Epstein files continuing to be covered up. This is so uniparty. Like, this is so all of us versus them. It is so obvious now. Yeah, we used to try to make it obvious by talking about other things, but we don't even have to spell it out anymore. Like, how more clear can we make it? So let's get right into the very last theory. It ties perfectly into what you just said, that our own government did it. And we've already kind of touched on why they would throughout the episode. But just to be clear, in case it isn't already to you, civil unrest, right? True civil war, a culture war that is finally coming to a head. They have been ingraining this into us for decades. They have wanted us to hate one another, and they tried it with George Floyd. Oh, they really tried to get us all fired up about race for a while, and we were, right? A lot of bad stuff happened surrounding that. And, every couple years you see somebody get killed or some cop kind of overdo it, and it sparks back up a little bit. This has been just bubbling under the surface for so long. They want different sides to see only the difference. They don't want us to recognize that mostly we're the same. We just have this one thing separating us. Oh, we're just uncommon in this one way. They feed the fire of that one difference between us in so many different ways. And something like this, where it is so blasted to the top of every news article, you can't escape it on your phone. This is something that actually could initiate that civil war, and it really feels like they want it. Oh my God, because what do they gain? They gain a country that they have total control over because they sell you the same bullshit they always sell you. They sell you safety. They sell you confidence that you are not going to have to fight your neighbor because they will protect you, and that you don't have to be afraid of your neighbor because the government will protect you. And when they talk bad about somebody that you like, they'll arrest them. That you cannot be okay with that. I don't care if you agree or disagree with your neighbor. The government can't come in and arrest somebody or revoke their passports because they disagree with you. And they certainly can't go around shooting people in the neck because of it. So we have to draw the hard line here, because the government is actively trying to sweep in and say, let us help you by offering more protection. Protection equals control. They are synonyms. It is the same word. Do you want an example? Go to the airport and try to get on a plane. They're protecting you by controlling you. Period. What does that mean? It means more digital IDs. It means AI watchdogs. This is full Big Brother. And they are trying so hard to initiate this globally. And do you know how I know? Because every single country around the world reacted to Charlie Kirk's assassination. This was not a United States event. This was a global event that rocked the population. And all of a sudden, everybody said, oh my God, this is what happens when you step out of line. People are out in mass supporting what they saw here, because even though we in this country don't see it, other countries recognize that when we fall, they're done. So our freedoms are so important. We have to protect it. Why would America do something like this? Why would they kill their own guy? It's a right-leaning president. We have a Republican in office. We have the majority. We have all these people like Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth and Kristi Noem. They totally support somebody like Charlie Kirk. Why would they do this? Frankly, I'm not convinced any of those people have control over themselves. Because for all we know, Israel or some other country or some other shadow government, shadow global government came in and said to each one of them, you're next. Is this what you want? You want to be murdered in front of your kids? Do you want to bleed out in front of the entire world? I don't know. I don't know if it's just simply our government thinks it's worth it to start a civil war and fall, because we will.
Yep.
Or if some other government or entity is pulling the strings, playing puppet master for our government officials and saying, you better fall in line, because he didn't.
Yep. And I think that's the theory I'm going to go with. I'm going to stick to it. I've said it probably for 20 years now. I've written about it for 20 years or so, that I believe that there is a small group of people who not only control this government, but they control other governments. And maybe the Vatican's involved, maybe the Crown in England's involved. I don't really know, but there's a small group of people who recognize if they want to have a one world government, a one world currency, all of those things, basically control the world, the United States, the last bastion of a free-thinking society, has to be removed. And how best to do it? Let's get them to crumble from within by destroying themselves. So we promote black, white, gay, straight, Republican, Democrat, rich, poor. All of these things are promoted into a frenzy to keep us at each other's throats, not really paying attention to who is dividing us and what they might be trying to accomplish. And I will continue to believe that the government, our government, who they kid you. The Republicans kid you, the Democrats kid you, the Uniparty kid you that they are here working for you. They are working at the behest of somebody else. It's filtered through the deep state, who really has their hands on the levers of control when it comes to big pharma, big government, big media, big food. All of these significant players are the next piece between our government and the globalists, but they use those pieces to get what they need through our House, through our Senate, shutting down people's passports because they said something. That sounds to me like a complete violation of freedom of speech, which is supposed to be forever and ever protected. Amen in this country. And the only thing that all of those elected officials did was swear to make sure that that was never infringed upon. So when you see all of these breakdowns taking place, our government is operating as a puppet for somebody else, in my estimation, and I will not get off of that until somebody can plainly prove to me why every single one of them breaks their oath that they promised to us. how they were going to conduct their actions once they took office. Every single one of them. Somebody show me one that has not. I've offered that challenge for years. I have not had one be brought to the table. Every single one has broken their oath.
I'll be honest, I agree with most of that. I do still have a soft spot in my heart for Thomas Massey. I do think he's one of the good guys. The only reason I ever question that is that I just think that when you step outside at all, the same thing that happens to Charlie Kirk happens to you. So then I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, anyone in government who has any voice, who this hasn't happened to, it does make me wonder.
Yeah.
So
well, that's a great point. And I think Thomas Massey largely is a strong proponent of constitutional principles. I do. However, if you go back and look at his voting record, if you stood up and went along with a bill that went through that was outside of constitutionally authorized parameters, and you went along with it, you were not upholding your oath. You promised that you were going to fight against any breaches of constitutional principle. And whether it's Thomas Massey or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Rand Paul, in a lot of cases, can get very constitutional, Mike Lee and others. But if you ever voted for something or participated in a vote and did not scream from the mountaintops that we should not be tolerating this or voting on this because we don't have the authority, then you did not fulfill the promise that you made to us.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And that's, I mean, this is, a whole nother episode's conversation, but that's the problem with these omnibus bills, because you can guarantee any bill that comes through looking constitutional is going to have 20 other things that are unconstitutional in it. So you're right. I mean, nobody, to your point, nobody in office can say that they've never, ever voted for something that's unconstitutional. It's just not possible.
And the biggest highlight I'd like to make to that is your Supreme Court justices. They are as far or further out of bounds constitutionally than almost anybody else.
Right.
Because if they heard any case that was not a federally regulated authority as spelled out in Article 1, Section 8, they have no business. None.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Whew. Yeah. Okay, so a couple more things. Obviously, we can go down a million tangents. This conversation really just, it opens up so many cans of worms. And I'm happy to see so many people talking about it and all of those cans that come along with it. But I want to talk about two more things quickly, and I don't want to dive into them for a couple reasons. But the first one is that there are a lot of people on the internet who say that it was all staged and it was so much of a false flag that Charlie Kirk isn't even dead. Now, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because it's too messy. It's not really the road I want to take, and I don't necessarily buy into it. However, I think it's important to recognize that there are a lot of people who have proposed a lot of somewhat sound evidence as to why this may be true. I would say, as always, to do your own research, and if you're interested in that theory, to look into it. I will say that Erica's speech, while there were things about listening to it that I felt were, they did pull on my heartstrings a little bit. Something about it just, I don't know, gave me something in my gut, said something's not right here when I listened to it. That could be for a number of reasons. Could just be because it's a terrible event and nobody really can do that correctly. But obviously, if you're interested, there are plenty of people talking about this online, so go look into that for yourself. We're not going to dive into it here. The other thing that I want to talk about real quick as the final theory is that there are also many voices that are proposing that this was just one of these rituals that happen by the global ruling class because they are a demonic entity. This ties directly to the Epstein files. For anyone who really knows anything about what's going on with the Epstein files, this is a lot more than just having a creepy obsession with young girls. There's a lot of really evil and really demonic stuff that goes on here, and much of it is ritualistic. So we talked about this actually not that long ago, talking about, the worship of Moloch and things like this. This is not something that is so fringe to talk about as it once was. This has become a lot more recognized, I think, in our society. because so many people are waking up to truth and trying to understand how we got here. And the only explanation to that is true evil. And evil requires worship the same way faith does. And that worship looks something like rituals on a global scale, on a global platform. And again, a ton of sound evidence with this stuff for anyone who's curious about what I'm talking about. It is out there. There are a lot of people who have spoken on this already just in the last few days. And honestly, I really recommend looking into it, because it's just another one of these points where if you're not already at the tipping point of your waking up experience, this will probably push you there. So worth looking into for sure. The last thing that I wanted to say, I have been reading a book here, and it's about how trauma impacts the human mind and body. And just interestingly enough, I was reading this page after the Charlie Kirk event, and I just thought it was interesting timing. Basically, this paragraph speaks about a study that was done at the American College of Neuropsychopharmacology in 1984. And this was an experiment done on dogs. And basically, the point was to traumatize them with pretty severe electric shock, and then opening the doors of the cages and shocking the dogs again. And there were a group of control dogs who had never been shocked before immediately running away. But the dogs who had earlier been subjected to inescapable shock made no attempt to flee, even when the door was wide open. They just laid there. And what they learned through this experiment was that the mere opportunity to escape does not necessarily make traumatized animals or people take the road to freedom. Like these dogs, many traumatized people simply give up. Rather than risking experiments with new options, they stay stuck in the fear they know. This is obviously because of the trauma that was caused to them and caused to their brain. It alters your brain chemistry. Trauma alters your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
So I say that because of what I said very early in this episode. On a global scale, we experienced something that many people would put in the category of PTSD inducing. We experienced that on a collective scale. That creates, whether you think it or not, a lasting trauma, because you're not supposed to see death like that. You're not. And you're not supposed to see it so readily available with a million heated reactions to it right away, and then just scroll right on to the next thing. You know, a review of a lipstick or a stupid cat video. That's not how your brain's supposed to work, but you all experienced it, or many of you. That altered your brain chemistry. What this book tells us, through scientific experiments that were done years ago, is that when you experience trauma like that, you will not escape for the opportunity of freedom. You will stay stuck in the fear that you know. That could be the reason. That could be exactly what is behind this. We don't need to know all the other things. We know that this caused that objectively.
Yeah. So just to go back and recap, you made some great points, observations of things that are being discussed out there. None of those things can I either debunk or give conclusive evidence to. You know, it was all set up. It was all staged thing. Who knows? What I do know is that a lot of people reacted favorably to witnessing that. That's wrong. We all have a choice at that level. We all have an opportunity to call it out for what it is. We all have an opportunity to stand on the good side or the evil side of that equation. And if by not standing up and shouting out against people being killed, even if it was all in the Matrix, even if it was all a big screen show, and you stand up because you believed in your heart of hearts that somebody got killed who you have a disagreeing opinion of, you are on the wrong side of the ledger. It's that simple. But we may not know how this went down, why it went down, and all of those things. It may take a long time. As you said, there's a lot of cameras, there's a lot of people, there's all kind of other things looking at it, which hopefully parses out what really happened, but we may not know. But what we do know is a large segment of this country stood up and supported believing or seeing that guy get killed. That's wrong. And if you are on that side of the fence, you're wrong. Until all the other stuff sorts itself out, the only thing I can say is you ought to be standing up, speaking out against anybody being hurt in any fashion, just because they have a differing opinion. You should that should be clear enough. While the rest of this stuff gets shaken out, is our government involved? Is it not involved? Was it just some kid? All of those things. Until that happens, if you tolerated it and found a place in your heart to support it, you're on the evil side of the ledger, and you need to get that out of you.
Yeah. So the final thing that I want to touch on before we wrap for the night is that I already expressed in the beginning of this episode how much this rattled me for the first several days. And it still continues to. But I will say this. I have never, through anything in my lifetime, I have never seen a reaction of so many people openly, out loud, unashamed, say that they believe in God and God will get us through this. I've never seen that reaction.
Amen. That's awesome.
I truly believe that this event was a line in the sand, but I do not think that because of any political recourse that will come of it. I think it because evil was trying its best to speak loudly, to scream through the masses, to the masses, to get people pulled to their side. And it did not work. And I am sure of that because there were people who cheered like you just said. There were. I have no idea how many of those people were bots. I know some of them were real. But there were more people than I ever knew who came out and said, Jesus is the only answer. This is a battle of good versus evil. I recognize it. I didn't recognize before. There are people, there are churches across the country who said they have record numbers after what happened. People who were Democrat and atheists their whole life who went to church this past weekend. A lot of change. There was a shift that happened when Charlie Kirk got shot. And I truly believe it's because we saw evil show its face. And when that happened, people of God, people of faith, woke up. And I don't know where that leads us with political conversations, but I know that it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Because we're seeing a groundswell truly of people coming to faith or of people trusting in their faith, people leaning into their faith because they recognize for the first time that this battle is good versus evil and that they have to make a stand. And I think we are going to continue to see that. And it gives me so much hope. It was such a relief to me as I started to see this shift. It was so much like blood, literal blood and hatred and aggression. And then there was just this shift of people being like, we have to put our faith in God, period. And I really think that tells me that, it's not that we don't know that we win in the end, right? We know that. But I think there are going to be more of us who win than I thought. I think I was worried for a lot of people, and now I see that people are waking up. When evil shows up, good rises. That's what I learned through this.
And I guess what is important for us to take away from that, and I'm so happy that you are able to witness that observation. What we have to do here at the Fourth Box is be a voice to continue to support turning to Christ, turning to faith, calling out evil, and standing with the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of truth, and all of those things. We have to continue to make that part of this podcast to encourage those that have recently been won over. I'm not at all going to throw a wet blanket on it. There was a very similar thing at 911.
Yeah.
Huge participation back in court. We have to feed that move in that direction. All those who are finding their way back from the dark side, recognizing that this is good versus evil, we cannot let that die down. We have to make it a point to continue to talk about this.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we cannot back up from the truth. No matter how much it tries to get shut down, no matter how much it tries to be pushed into the shadows, pushed into the narrative of conspiracy theorists. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Kirk or Epstein. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. It doesn't matter who you are. You have to be vocal in truth because truth defeats evil. It always has, it always will. It is a surefire way to push evil back. And all of us have to have the courage to be truthful in whatever it is that you are willing and comfortable speaking out about. You might not have the comfort to talk about every single thing going on because, in fairness, it's too much for anyone. None of us should have to know everything that's going on. That's trauma in itself. We were never meant to know all of these things all at once. So the things that you know, the things that you know in your heart to be true, the things that you know align with the mission of God, you have to speak on. I mean, we've said that forever, but now we know truth is under attack in a way that most of us hadn't ever had to see. We saw what happens when you speak truth, and that's why it's more important than ever to do so.
That's correct. And I have a Bible verse on which to call on tonight as we button this up that I hope summarizes this as well. And that is this: an honest witness saves lives, but a false witness is a betrayer. And that comes from Proverbs 14, verse 25. So stand on the side of truth and do not be bashful. Truth will win in the end.
Amen. It sure will. You guys know the drill. We will be here next week. Nothing is going to stop us. Until then, stay vigilant.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.